This is Creativity Drill with Dr. Don and Jonathan Rundman.
Hey everybody, this is Jonathan Rundman, your co-host on Creativity Drill. Our guest this week is Tia Salmela Keobunpeng from Silver Cocoon here in Minneapolis. She is amazing. She's a designer, she does architectural work, and she creates beautiful jewelry. Well, this is a great episode, and it's very inspiring. And I have a special connection to Tia because we're both Finnish American from the North Woods up near the shores of Lake Superior. And I've always really related to her work and her personal story, and I think you will as well. So without any further ado, we're happy to present Tia Salmela Keobunpeng of Silver Cocoon.
You're an architectural type.
I'm an architectural type, yes.
Yo, this is a good question to ask at the front end is how do you call yourself?
What is your vocational identity?
I usually refer to myself as a designer.
Okay. Because you do work on buildings.
I do, yeah. But I tend to be involved in the schematic design phase, which is kind of the beginning. So I meet with, like the projects that I work on currently are in partnership with my husband.
Tell me how you say his name.
His first name is Sulian.
Sulian, okay. I appreciate the fact that you and your husband you're kind of doing like indie rock design.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because you're self-employed, right? And you're freelancing.
Yeah.
And it's not like our situation is like Dawn has a job and I'm the freelancer, but you both are freelancing.
Well, yes. Yep.
And I think that's awesome. Like I get really energized by that.
He's worked off and on for my dad over the last 15 years.
Okay.
So he is yes, freelancing, but a lot of what he ends up doing, he's supporting my dad and his projects.
Oh, great.
A lot of his projects, and then we do our own projects as well. So
but even that is so cool because it's the family business.
It's all in the family.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. It's very cool.
So do you find that you have at any given time maybe 5 or 10 different projects in different stages? Or do you focus on just one thing, or is it...
Oh, no, it's impossible to focus on one thing. I keep trying to, but it's absolutely impossible. And I think probably since the moment I met Sulian, my struggle has been feeling like I need to focus on one thing, and he's always just said, just do it all. Just... it's like it is really difficult to focus on one thing.
I think before we get farther in,
sure.
I want to tell a couple stories of how I first interacted with you, and I wonder if you even remember.
Okay.
But you probably don't. But that's okay, because I was in a large audience of yours. But the first time I was I think the only time we've ever been in the same room at the same time was in 2008 in Duluth at FinFest.
Oh,
and I didn't know who you were. And it was the first time I had a gig playing music at a FinFest. I was playing solo.
Yep.
And of course it's Duluth, it's beautiful. It was quite a large convention. There was lots of people there.
Yeah, it was a great one.
And I was having a blast because I was like playing in the evenings. And I was there for 5 days all by myself. And so I just went to lectures and movies and stuff all day long. And it was like a nerd festival. I just loved it. So I went to this panel discussion with like Finnish American women artists. And you were a panelist.
I was. Yeah.
And I hadn't heard of any of the panelists, and I just thought the whole thing was awesome. And I still remember some of the work of the other women that were there. I remember one woman was shooting underwater photography.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
it was
I think it was Ginny Mackey.
Yeah, somebody else from Duluth, but it was super cool. And you were there, and you were talking about your work, and I just thought the whole thing was awesome. And I'd never been to a FinFest before, and this was at the beginning of me really investing in my heritage. And I had been to Finland recently before then. So I was connected to my cousins and stuff over there. So anyway, I saw you in this panel, and I thought it was really cool.
What was your topic? Do you remember?
Well, so the panel was kind of in conjunction with an exhibit at the Art Institute. And so I can't remember how many people were there, like 8 people?
Yeah,
maybe?
there was quite a big panel.
Yeah, and so it was like they selected art. They did a Finnish American art exhibit at the Duluth Art Institute, and so I really liked actually how they displayed my stuff. They had, they had different necklaces hanging on a wall inside a framed box, and so the panel was part of that, like learning more about the people who were on exhibit. And honestly, I don't know if I remember what we talked about.
Yeah, it was just questions. I think there was a moderator or something,
Yeah.
questions from the audience. But anyway, I came up and I said hi to you, and
Yeah.
I got your card.
You did?
Yep. And so I remember checking out your website stuff, like even way back in 2008.
Yeah.
So it was a long time ago. And then,
Well, if it was 2008, that was like the first year that I was making my jewelry.
Really?
Like, yeah. And back then, I mean, like I've thought about this because it's been 8 years, right?
Yeah.
So, like back then, that was like right at the beginning of Etsy.
oh,
So like as
yeah.
someone who, as like a designer maker,
Yeah.
someone who makes the things that they design, back then, like you couldn't really sell your stuff in the way that you can now. Like
Right.
Etsy was a huge thing because then it was like everyone had their own website, quote unquote.
Sure.
It's like, well, it's Etsy, and we all see that as a different thing. But having your own website was a huge undertaking back
Yeah.
then. Like you had to have a huge chunk of cash to
Yep.
pay someone to design it and build it for you.
It was even like before PayPal was really cooking. I mean, it was
yeah. Oh, yeah.
online.
Checks in the mail.
Online retail was hard.
really, really hard.
Yep.
Yeah, the world has changed so drastically.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that was a cool event. And Duluth's your hometown, is that right?
I was actually born on the Iron Range.
Okay.
And we moved to Duluth when I was 12.
Oh,
So
okay.
then I went to middle school and high school in Duluth.
But it must have been sort of cool to be
Yeah.
in this big convention in your high school hometown
Yeah.
with all these. I mean, there were a ton of people there.
There were a lot of people there.
It was a big, and that was one of the best run FinFests I've ever been to. Like some of them are quite lame,
Yeah.
and some of them are awesome. And that was like a great one.
That was a great
really
one. I think they had
great
a
one.
very enthusiastic committee. Actually, my sister-in-law was part of that
Yeah.
committee, and she's a very passionate Finn.
Oh yeah, yep. So that was cool. And so anyway, I met you then just briefly, and have been starting paying attention ever since then. And then this is another kind of fun thing. In 2011, which was 5 years ago, the first time my band Kaivama went on a national tour.
Yeah.
We promoted your work.
I know.
Because Sarah, the fiddler in the band, wore, I think it was the hive necklace,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so she wore the hive necklace at every show. And then we had the Silver Cocoon promo cards on our merch table.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
But I'm like, my aunt came to one of your shows, and then I saw it. She's like, the fiddler is wearing your necklace. I'm like, I know.
So I like every night I would put out the stack
Oh,
of
that
Silver
is so
Cocoon cards.
nice, you
So that was really cool. So your aunt on the West Coast or somewhere else in the Midwest?
No, she
that
she
was
lives
a-
in Bayfield now.
Oh, okay. Because that was a West Coast tour. I specifically remember that we really had your
or else
stuff.
maybe it was in Duluth.
Well, we played everywhere. So
Yeah.
there's a chance that we had the Silver Cocoon stuff for
Who
a
knows?
while.
Maybe it was my mom at a Duluth.
Yeah.
But anyway, someone,
Right.
some
well,
relative.
it's funny. Like I've met a lot of your relatives
Yeah.
at a lot of gigs, like aunts and uncles and things.
Yes, yep.
And so your family is all over the place. And then so that was like a cool musical connection I had with you. And then there was 2 years ago. This was a really fun one. I was in Nashville on tour
Yeah.
and hanging out, and I had a free evening. And Jeremy Messersmith was playing in Nashville.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to go to the show because his bass player had just played bass on my album. And so I went to this club in Nashville and I walked in, and the first thing I see is your jewelry.
I know.
It was awesome. And it was on the merch table. And I thought, I love how you've integrated your art and jewelry into the music business and into other kinds of art. I mean, you've got this collaborative vibe going on. I just think it's really cool. So those were a couple cool moments of
TS
Well, the
sightings.
irony
Tia
is
sightings. Yeah.
Tia sightings. Well, the irony is that I actually brought you guys 2 pins. With Valentine's Day coming up and everything. But
Oh yeah, because I saw you posted on
The Heart Murmurs pin.
Yeah, because it's kind of a Valentine's-y
Yeah.
looking
Nice.
piece.
Well, I mean, his album was released right before Valentine's Day too, and the whole Heart Murmurs and
Right.
songs and stuff like that. But
Did you craft that shape specifically for his record release?
well, I'm actually friends with him. I think we used to go to the same yoga studio, and then we met through a mutual friend somewhere around that same time. And we've actually hosted him at our house for one of his supper club tours, which was really fun. And so around the time that that album was getting ready to be released, he actually asked me if I would make something. And he said pin. And so that, I mean, it was a pretty no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know?
Good.
I had these visions, of course, of all, like, the whole crowd wearing, you know, so the pin is just a really tiny neon pink kind of angular heart, just like his album cover.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had this vision of, like, the whole crowd with, you know, the lights are down and then the stage lights come out and all these little pink things are glowing. Of course, I don't think that many people bought them, that it would ever have that effect. But in my mind, that's how I see that pin.
Yeah. And now, like, it's always available. Like, it's always a Valentine's thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little nice romantic moment there.
Yeah.
So, like, it's funny how often just randomly I'll see your work in the world, and then Dawn has it. Like, I'm gonna go to the Walker Arts Center. It's at the Walker.
Yep.
You know, so it's just cool that you're really out there.
I want to go back when you said that you started in 2008.
Yes.
You said, and it was more difficult to be a designer maker.
Well,
what has sort of been the evolution of your jewelry line? Have you found that it seems like everybody can find something, and many people can find many things that they would just love to have. So what was the reception like initially, and how have you seen it grow now that Etsy is the giant that it is for creatives?
Well, so, you know, I've always made stuff. I've always been a creative person. I mean, honestly, when I was in high school, I made, like, do you remember those friendship necklaces and bracelets, you know, that you make with embroidery
floss? Yes.
I mean, like, you know, I sold them at the Global Village in Duluth when I was in high school. So there's this, like, entrepreneurial maker sort of thing, which, I mean, they were just kind of run of the mill. But anyway, so I've always just made stuff, and I've made myself jewelry. Like, if I've had an event or something, I would do that. And when I was on maternity leave with my first son, I was working at IKEA at the time. I started just making jewelry because I had extra time on my hands. And
what mediums or what materials?
It was mostly beads, you know, and, you know, stuff that I could just, I went out and bought. I would, you know, also collect or find, like, vintage necklaces and take them apart and use the stuff. But at that point in time, this was like 2006, 2007, around that time that I was doing that stuff. I mean, it wasn't anything like recreating the wheel or whatever, but it was, you know, at that point, you know, I would do some simple moves, like, instead of stacking your bead rod with a whole bunch of beads, I would just put one at the bottom and have them dangling, or, you know, just really simple takes on what everyone else was already doing. And, you know, it was more of a hobby than anything. But then I would try to sell it and do that stuff. Because, you know, Silver Cocoon started in 2001 when we were in Duluth. And it basically started when we bought an Airstream camper as a sales venue. So I hosted two sales in the Airstream camper in Duluth. The first sale was the summer of 2001, and we had, you know, maybe 10 or 11 different makers contributing stuff. And then the second one was maybe in October, right after September 11th.
Oh.
And so, you know, it's like everything changed after September 11th.
Yeah.
And so this idea of just kind of, I don't know, doing whatever I want. I started to take I'm like, you know, I need to get a job, or I need to do something more serious,
right,
and whatever. Ironically, my husband at the time, he had a very stable job working with my father, doing architecture and stuff. And his reaction was, wow, I need to start doing something, creative for myself. And so we both had opposite reactions. And so it's kind of taken a long rambling road to get to where we are. But so when I started making this beaded stuff again in 2006 and 2007, I hosted a couple sales in our house, reminiscent of the original Silver Cocoon sales, where I invited other friends and stuff to be there. And so at that time,
Did you hustle it seriously to the community and get like total strangers, or is it like a party for friends?
That was, I'm trying to think of how many people we had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like maybe 6 different people, including myself, for that particular sale.
Well,
in our
6
house.
different artists, right? But who are the shoppers? Is it just like?
Oh, it's like people who.
So people
we all like invited
Okay.
people that we all knew.
Okay.
So in theory, you would get other people,
Right.
But one of our friends was a model builder, and he had his own shop. And around that time, he's like, "Hey, Tia, I got a laser cutter. You should come check it out. You could make some jewelry." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. So busy. I don't know if I can get over there." Like totally just like, it was like pulling teeth to get me to go and look at this thing. I don't know what was wrong with me, but sometimes it's like that, right? So I went and I ran my first file on the machine, and it's like literally my brain just like opened up. It's like a base or like a football stadium with the roof that opens. It's just like, whoa, it's like, oh my goodness,
this is it.
I don't have to like go and search for things that are kind of like what I want. It's like I can just make whatever I want, and so that was a huge moment, right? So I had a show at the Suvac Gallery that a friend had invited me to be a part of. It was a 1-day deal, and of course I made just like a ton of stuff for it.
Wow!
And I sold some. But
did you end up buying your own cutter?
No. I
You go to the friend's house.
Well, I ended up renting time on his machine for a good while.
Huh. It's so interesting because it's like a tool gave you the epiphany, or like a piece of technology.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that is true for other kinds of creative people, whether you're writing or making music or painting, whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you open yourself up to a new tool, you will stumble into a whole new universe of possibilities.
Well, at that time, not everyone, it's like now they're selling laser cutters that you can just have on your counter, like anyone can have them. But at that time, not many people were doing it.
Yeah.
And, I had been making stuff for so long that and not really, like nothing really stuck. I just kind of like made it. Nope, that didn't stick. Nope, that didn't stick. But I had fun doing it, and it was good. Well, so I had all this stuff left over from the show at the Suvac, and so I had some pictures, and I emailed it to the Walker gift shop, and just was like, here's a little bit of what I'm doing. Would you ever be open to meeting with me and looking at it?
Well, do you know anybody at the Walker at this point? Or is this is like a cold call?
It was kind of like a cold call.
That's a lot of guts.
It was a cold call.
Because it's not like you're calling like, Jane's Craft Shop.
No, I know.
You're calling only like one of the most prestigious museums in the world.
It was pretty modern stuff, like
sure.
Jane's Craft Shop probably would be like, no way, we don't want that.
Maybe another place, dear.
But it does say something about you, though. In the one place you could call to try to get your foot in the door, you call the Walker. That's pretty awesome.
That's great.
Go big or go home at some point, right? So I emailed them, and I was, I really wasn't expecting to hear anything back. I was hopeful, but I didn't really think that I would hear anything back. But I feel like she responded right away.
Wow.
And she said, we don't have any room in our cases for the holiday season, but I can give you a trunk show. And I'm like, what? I just wanted you to look at it. And
wow,
so
and they're ready to go.
They were ready to go. So the first weekend in December.
This is what, 2007, 2008?
This would have been December of 2007.
Wow.
So the way that they used to do it during the membership appreciation weekend, they have special deals and special things to honor their members. They used to have a jewelry artist trunk show. A different artist for Friday, a different artist for Saturday, a different artist for Sunday. And so it was kind of like one person was featured on each day. And so I got the Friday, and it went really well. And then they've basically carried my stuff in their cases since that time. But then that was also the last year that they did things that way. So starting in the spring is when they when they had their first jewelry artist mart, where they invite invite many different jewelry artists and have like a mart basically for one day. And so they've been doing that ever since, and they do it in May and they do it in November.
Were your designs in 2007 quite similar to what you would see today, just sort of with the organic shapes? And
there are
things
definitely
like that?
the things that I started with are still being carried through in different ways. I think that I've become more, my scale has gotten better, I think. A lot. They were really big
What do you
things.
mean? What does that mean? Your scale has gotten better.
Just better proportion to people. And
To people actually wearing the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, not that the first stuff didn't look good. You know, it was, like I said, there's still some of those things that are my, most popular items, but
Right.
I've gotten better at, I guess the longer you do something,
Yeah.
you just keep adding more and more and more. And so where I am now with my collection, if I have a certain earring style, for example, I'll have it in maybe 2 or 3 different sizes or different lengths or, that sort of thing, because people are shaped differently.
Yeah.
Some people have long necks. Some people have short necks.
Yeah.
Do you look at people's necks and ears as an earring designer and as a necklace? Like, you don't? Okay.
Only when they're trying stuff on and they're trying to figure something out. But like, I realize, I now have probably like over 20 colors. And so it gets overwhelming for people. And so that's kind of the, hair color, skin color, face shape,
Yeah.
neck length,
Do you think that, what's it called, acrylic? Is that kind of your signature substance?
Substrate, right? Isn't that what it is? Your substrate.
Yes.
But you work in wood.
I do work in wood
Also.
as well, and people love the wood, and I love the wood. But people also love the color, and
Because the
now
stuff,
you can get
Dawn's, you have the green
Green. They're really deep green.
earrings. Yeah, those were cool. And
worn them.
those I think are your classic line, or maybe like dating
pod.
back.
I think they're the small pod. Is that right? Isn't that what you?
Yeah, right.
See, I remember. I have this amazing memory. I cannot remember people's names very well anymore.
But you remember
But
the
I will remember
earring
what you bought.
Nice.
If I sold it to you, I will remember, because
Nice.
it really is an art to find like the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not the right.
Wow.
One thing is not the right thing for everyone.
Right.
I found.
Well, here's what I think is cool about, I guess when I think of you, I think of the pod, if that's what it's called, that
Yeah.
Dawn has,
Yeah.
and I think of the hive. I've seen tons of people wear the hive, and maybe there's other. There's earring versions of it
is
too.
another one.
Yeah.
Is that a necklace or earrings?
The drape. There is a necklace, but I think the earrings, they're the ones with the like 2 or 3 tiers.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
3
yeah.
different sizes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like what you've done, and I don't know if you tried this or if it just happened, but it seems like you created a vibe or a look or a sense about those kinds of pieces of jewelry, or just the proportions or whatever, that is really a signature to yourself.
Yeah.
Like this is like the Tia Samula thing.
Yeah.
And it's totally identifiable even to the other models, the other models or the other kinds of jewelry. You can tell they're related, and it makes sense in the grand scheme of your work. Plus, to me, I feel like there's a Nordic quality to them.
Yeah.
But there's also like a modern kind of, and it's clean and it's a little bit there's a little nature-y.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know that was happening, or did it just?
Or are you sketching this? Are you drafting it digitally, or how do you develop the shapes?
Well,
Yeah.
the pod is so the very first idea that I had, like that day when I put my very first file through, was a bracelet called the Topo bracelet. So it was conceived of as like 3 different sheets of 3 different bracelets, essentially different shapes, and you wear them and they kind of play against each other. So I mean, in architecture you see topographic models all the time. We use cardboard and you cut them out and you get these you get this volume and stuff like that. So there was also a necklace that went along with it, and so the hole in the bracelet is not circular. It's an odd shape hole, and it is relating to the shape of your hand. So if you like put your fingers together to try to put it into a bracelet, your hand isn't round. It's an odd shape. So I have bigger hands and I can never get my hands into bracelets. And so it kind of was like, you know, well, I'm just going to make a bracelet that I can put on my hand,
right?
Because it's going to respond to my thumb, and it's going to respond to how big the rest of my hand is. And so that was the idea. And so then from that bracelet, obviously you have that hole and you're cutting the material out. And so that is, in jewelry standards, a lot of material to be wasting on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so
it's the donut hole.
It's the donut hole. People
have
buy
to
a
eat
lot
the
of
donut hole.
You have to eat the donut hole. And so
It's a shame to throw it away.
it really is. It really bothered me to throw that material away. And so, you know, I started there, you know, there was a necklace, in the, you know, an early design was a necklace that utilized that interior shape. And then ultimately, I started just kind of cutting the rings out. And so you'll like the pod bunch necklace is made with that shape, but you know, the concentric rings cut out from it.
Right.
And then the pod earring also stemmed from that as well. And so like that shape is still carried through. It's still, you know, like the pod necklace, the pod bunch earrings made from those same pieces are like, they're some of my best selling pieces, and they're very, you know, their signature.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because you can see the consumer's response to your ideas and how the consumer is drawn to those signature ideas or shapes or materials. That is kind of like, so if they like something you made, they're going to be drawn to the other things that you make because they're just into that thing. And when we were doing these discussions on this podcast, I'm always applying in my mind what we're talking about to every other medium that anybody could be doing in their creative work. And, you know, all artists or performers are really searching for their voice. You know, they want to, and not everyone discovers their voice. They just kind of fumble around, and that's fine. You know, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But when an artist actually discovers their sort of consistent voice, then it's a really magical moment. And I mean, it's true for comedians. I mean, like I listened to interviews with comedians, and they talk about how they'll do like 4 years on the road.
I'm reading the Judd Apatow book.
Oh, you are?
Sick in the Head, where it's just all interviews with comedians.
Yeah.
and it's alphabetized. So I've been through like Albert Brooks, Amy Schumer. He starts with the Jerry Seinfeld, and then he's so like right now he's interviewing Eddie Vedder just because he could, I guess. But to hear him talk with Jerry Seinfeld about and Amy Schumer about like how many years you need on the road. Yeah,
like because sometimes
to find your voice.
Right, because sometimes you can do it for like 4 or 5 years and be really successful and still not narrow it down. And then when you hit that moment, there's a certain kind of clarity or momentum or it's just like a logical sort of a satisfaction about it, and then the audience knows or the consumer recognizes that. Did you ever have a moment like that where you realized, oh, this is real now? Like, wow, you know?
I might have just had it last year. As you were talking, I'm thinking, you know, it's like, I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
Totally.
And then at the same time, I just said that the pieces that I'm selling the most of right now come from the very first idea. You know what I mean? Like the very, very first idea is still relevant.
Right.
So there's this, there's definitely a perseverance that needs to happen.
Yeah. Oh, listeners, listen to this. This is so good.
Maybe. Oh my goodness. That's a positive way to say that. Maybe. Yeah. You know, because, maybe it's a foolishness. I don't know. Because it's not always easy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that there's a perception of success, and then there's there's different measures of success.
Right.
And I'm successful in many ways, but, you know, there's still there's still a practical success that's necessary when you have children and a mortgage and all of those things. And it's still, we're not rolling in it.
Right.
We're not rolling in it.
Creative types are usually are not
rolling in it.
Right.
But then also, the voice. So like that, the idea of finding your voice. On one level, I think that my voice and even our voice, meaning my husband and I, like ironically, I think that if you look at our residential design projects and even the projects that my husband, like he'll do some like art installation stuff, like he's done a wood artist wall in the lobby of the Soho building, for example, in the North Loop. And he did an artist facade project on West Broadway and Penn Avenue on the KMOJ building. He's got these artist panels. Huh. And so, if you look at his work on his own, if you look at our work together and then you look at my jewelry, there is this common thread that you see through it, like stylistically and aesthetically, like it's consistent. Yeah, which is pretty amazing, given that we have such different. We come from we literally come from like he said, traveling to Minnesota was like the furthest place. Like if you look at a globe, it's basically on the opposite side of the world. Right.
And culturally too.
Culturally too. I mean, he was like almost 9 when he came. So he has probably the best outlook of anyone I know in my life. Like he came at a point when I remember when my oldest son was 8 going on 9, and I'm like, wow, that is where he was when he came here. And he basically got on a spaceship and came to a different planet that had snow because they came February 1st. I mean, you know what I mean? So in his mind, in a way, he just has this approach, like anything is possible. You just kind of have to do it. Right. Yeah. And so as far as a voice goes, I feel like we do have a clear voice. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that within that clarity, there isn't also murkiness and unsettled.
And there's evolution.
You're
always changing.
Always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about parenting.
Okay.
Because we're parents and you're a parent.
Yeah.
We have 2 children. Do you have 2 children?
Yeah, 2 boys.
And a lot of our guests on this show have been people without children, and then the couple parents we've had have had adult children, or so we've barely had guests that are sort of peers with us with elementary school children.
Yeah.
And so I'd be interested to hear what it's like to be a creative person and a freelancer and a parent.
Where both of you are maybe in the house at any given time for at least some days.
Well, it's like working from your house is one thing. That's difficult for some people.
Oh, that's huge. That's a huge
for themselves
thing.
Alone.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. To turn that off or to have it on at the right time. Right. I often say that I'm always working or I'm never working. It's like when I should be working, I'm like distracted by family stuff, and when I'm with the family, I feel like I'm not always there because I'm distracted with the work stuff, and it's just like it's not, it's a constant attempt to put those in the right places. But then you add kids, and it's like voices, like literally voices in your head all the time. I just read an article about raising creative kids. It was in the New York Times last weekend. And, basically to paraphrase it, it said that quote unquote ordinary kids, which is kind of, you can have a problem with that statement in general, but basically it said that ordinary kids have an average of 6 rules in their household, and the most creative kids have less than 1. Like less than 1.
On average.
Which is not 1. Right. It's almost 1. And regardless of what the rest of the article said, it made me feel a little bit better because what it ends up being is that we don't have a very regular routine. Right. We do in the sense that the regularity is set by the children need to be at school at this time,
Yep.
and they need to be picked up at this time, and there are those sorts of things.
Right.
But beyond that, there's a fluidity that comes from probably our need to constantly be multitasking or having our, having our work be flexible, which is great, because if there are conferences or things like that need to happen during the day, you can do that. You can be that person that's available. But then, the stuff still needs to get done. And so then that means that in the evening, you're not playing games or, doing the things that the families with 6-year-olds do. It's like we don't have as carved out of time for specific things. And there are days that I feel really terrible about that. And then there are days when I see something that one of my boys has made, or the approach that they've taken on something, and I'm like, wow, that is like so creative. And that's, it's like I feel like somehow they're going to benefit from it, somehow.
Do you feel like they're absorbing just by osmosis some of this stuff, or like how intentional do you try to be to encourage their creative development? Because I struggle with this myself, because of course in my mind as a musician, like I would love to have my kids playing instruments and making recordings and doing all the, just because I like that.
Yeah.
And so it seems natural in some way that, of course they would want to do that too. But at the same time, I also don't want to be pushy or
Tiger mom.
I didn't want to be a tiger mom, right? Or I don't want to like shape them into my own little mini me or whatever. And so I've really primarily backed off a lot of that. And that seems to be working well for our particular family, that they do what they want. And it's a very low pressure. It's a very chill environment.
Yeah. Well, so here's a perspective, right? So I grew up with David Salmola as a dad.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
And so, like, I'm an architectural person because I have lived that every moment of my life.
Right.
Like, literally.
Yep. Was your dad's career really cooking even when you were born?
No.
Oh, okay. So we
lived on the Iron Range. We lived on the Iron Range. He was working for Damberg and Peck. They've changed names over the course of the years, but he worked for them for 20 years, and he did a lot of anything that's really modern up on the Iron Range is probably because of him. Yep. Like the street lights in Virginia, Minnesota, for example, that are like oddly modern in a out of place sort of way. It's like, yes, he picked those. I guarantee it. It's like the chairs in a meeting room at the Eveleth Airport. He picked those. It's like you find these things, and it's just like these little remnants of him.
Right.
And so, as a kid, I don't really remember I had to go outside and make something up to play when I was, I'm the middle of 5 kids, but I'm also 5 years younger than my older brother, ahead of me, and I'm 7 years older than my younger brother. So in many ways, I was like the baby for a while, and then I was an only kid for a while.
Wow.
And I was the older kid, I was, so I've kind of had this odd existence within my family, in that way. But I do remember, I think this has to do with how old I was and where I fell in our family, because my brothers were old enough where they might not have had to come with my parents. Like my dad would go to site visits, for example, maybe it was a weekend and he still wanted, we still went to like Giants Ridge. I remember when the original Giants Ridge chalet and training center buildings were under construction because I was walking through the construction sites, and I would find, how they like punch out the HVAC system, and you get like these metal discs. When I was a kid, I swear, I thought I
fun.
Hit gold because I thought
treasure,
money, right? Yeah. But so I had to go to all of these places, and I had to just be there
Yeah.
while he did what he needed to do. And it was probably boring. But those things are just like...
That was just baked into you.
It's just baked into me.
Yeah. Did you have a moment where you realized that your family was not normal?
Yeah, actually, on the Iron Range for sure.
So you were even pretty like elementary school, or you kind of got it?
Well, I mean, he designed the elementary school that I went to, you know, like we moved to the new school when I was in 2nd grade. And yeah, I mean, it was a school that didn't have walls.
Right.
Like the classrooms didn't have walls. It was different.
It was really progressive.
And it was, you know, it's like, and I knew very clearly that it was because of him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I knew pretty early on, but that, you know, it's like,
what did you feel? Were you proud of him?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
You thought it was cool.
Oh, so cool. Yeah.
Did you,
awesome.
Especially, I remember that once we got into that school for sure.
Could you feel him, or like was his presence in the architecture the way, like if someone had a painting that a parent or a loved one had made, and you'd look at the painting and you'd think, oh, you know, so and so painted this. Would the building itself connect with you in that kind of way?
Well, for sure. I mean, for sure. I mean, you know, he designed a lot of the furniture that was in our house, like, you know, the couches that we had, he designed and built them. So, I mean, he had, you know, made sculptures from the barn structure from his farm in Sabika. You know, like he was creative. He had a shed that was full of paintings that he did. And I remember you could only you could just swing the door open, and then you could stand in that one spot where the door swung, and then everything else was paintings. And I just remember looking, you know, just standing in there and like, wow, these are all, you know? And so it's like,
That's
I don't
hugely
know
influential.
I don't know if I was so conscious, but these are like memories that I have in my mind. So like that's a visual. The other visual is of him, you know, trace paper or bamwad is like, you know, it comes in rolls. Architects, like older architects use it a lot because they are drawing by hand more. But he would have this yellow, you know, he would have the yellow kind, like this canary yellow. And so he was working on I don't even know what it was, but he taped up, you know, kind of low on the wall, like 3 different elevations of a building or something like that. And then he would ask me like, which one do you like the best?
Wow.
And so I would sit there and I'm like, well, he's probably going to ask me why. So, you know, I remember like thinking about it for a long time and then telling him, and then of course telling him why. And I got the impression that he was really listening to me. You know, like I am probably as daring as I am because I felt relevant, I guess.
Yeah.
In that sort of way, you know?
Yeah, that's incredible. And it illustrates the power of, I think, wow, parenting is of course it's a huge responsibility, but if you think about just in terms of creativity, the influence a parent can have on a child in terms of giving them permission to think and dream and have opinions and express that what's pleasant to them or what they're drawn to. I mean, that's incredible.
It is incredible.
That's so cool.
That's a good legacy that a parent can leave a child.
Well, who knows if he was conscious of it? Who knows if he remembers that? But as a kid, like I remember that, you know, and that's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think it's true. Like this stuff is so applicable to all parents. I think regardless if you're a professional artist or not, is the openness you have towards your children's creative personal expression, their opinions on how things look in the physical world, how things are shaped. I mean, it sounds so weird to talk about it, but
what their room looks like.
Oh my gosh!
I think that's really interesting to go in kids' different rooms. You know, I've done that over the years and just think that like, wow, this kid has 2 framed things on their wall, and that's it. You know, and it's like.
My room is so tacky.
Yeah, well, just all the painter's tape and the decals and the this and the that and so like, wow, this room has, you know, it looks like it's being staged for a real estate photo shoot compared to you know, the walls in our home. So how does your house look for someone walking into your house for the first time? Like it's your kids' like their new friend and their parent just met you and they're coming to pick up their kid at your house. So they walk into your house and what are they going to see that might be different or unusual or that sort of speaks to creative makers live here?
Well, we got really lucky, and we've been in our house for 12 years, and it's a house that was designed by an architect named Saul Smiley in 1953.
Wow.
And we bought it from the original owner.
Wow.
The woman was in her 90s, and we met two of her grown children. But so it was designed for them.
Huh.
Like, one of the room has 2 vanities for the 2 girls, and they shared the room, and then the other room is the darker finishes, so it's got cork floor and darker wood trim, and that was the boys' room. And so it was like, there are things that were very specific to them. So the first thing is that, I mean, it is not a typical house.
Yeah.
We didn't design it. We haven't really done anything to the bones of the house because it's just a really good house. And so that probably speaks to it.
Yeah.
It's an architecture.
Well, it's like the house itself is a work. It's a work of art.
Architecture.
Yeah. And boy, as I get older too, I'm more and more aware of how mysterious it is that like a physical space can have its own identity or its own sort of fuel or its sort of momentum about being in the space itself.
Oh, yeah.
And so much of life, we don't tap into that because if you're going to Target and then you're going to school and you're going to the post office and, most of the time it's primarily function.
Yep.
You need walls and a roof to keep the rain out and, but once in a while you'll enter a space of some sort where you think to yourself, it just feels different in here. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible.
Like,
but it doesn't feel different. I mean, like I've had that my entire life.
Yeah.
Because I mean, our house it was in Parkville, which is just outside of Virginia, between Virginia and Mountain Iron. It's a little tiny 2-bedroom house. At some time when I was pretty young, my dad put an addition onto it, which was his office, and it had these big, floor to ceiling windows looking out to the yard. And so it's like that, and then going to the building sites and seeing the buildings when they're complete. It's like I have known that distinction my entire life. And so I obviously have learned to gravitate towards the architecture.
Right.
But maybe I'm numb to I don't know. It's still great.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm not numb to the awe. I'm just more practiced in it, in seeing it, I guess.
Don't you think that in life we don't take the step back and realize those moments when we're in a beautiful place that just works? Because, when you do have the luxury to do that, like maybe you're on a vacation and you're touring that's what happens when you go to Europe, right? And you go to a cathedral, and the whole point is to take a step back and look at the building or whatever. Or if you go to Frank Lloyd Wright House in Oak Park, Illinois, we used to live a few blocks from there. Those sorts of things where the whole point is to take a step back and pay attention. But boy, it's so cool. And are you able to narrow down qualities about a room or about a space that do that? What do you think? Is it about light? Is it about proportion? What's going on in those situations?
For sure, where we live, in the northern climate, light is a huge thing. It's interesting because Siouxland, coming from a really hot climate, sun is a very different element in a southern climate. It's something that you want shade from and relief from.
Right.
But here it's like the days are short and you want to have as much light as you can in different rooms. But really, the key to the most comfortable space is to have light from 2 different directions. So like a window here and a window, on 2 different access points. But for me, I know all of this stuff. And I can see, my dad is a great architect. He creates these places.
Yeah.
I'm more of an editor when it comes to space. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not as comfortable creating architecture. I've become good at seeing an existing space and finding the potential in it to change it, to make it better, so that you can turn it into one of those great spaces. And so, it's probably come from being on our own during the recession when no one's building new stuff. And, it's like, it's kind of, you take the smallest project and you can make it great. And there's really potential in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a feeling about less is more?
Well, of course, everyone likes to look at spaces that are empty and clean, but it's not always the reality. In our house, there's Legos everywhere all the time. And I think there just is a time for everything. And we had a clean house before, and we'll have a clean house again. But like right now, that's part of it. Part of a good space is being able to live in it and use it.
Right.
And so our house is pretty used. Our house is used well.
I have this kind of dance I'm doing in my own creative work for the last about 15 years, which is function versus form. And I think in my early career, my motivation was form. That was the priority. And function was just, if it happened, fine. And then in my 30s, I got really obsessed with function. And I spent a whole lot of energy creating stuff only to be functional. And form was less important to me. And now I'm the pendulum's swinging back. And I'm more motivated by form again. And so and I really don't think either one is right or wrong. And they both
a good
can.
marriage is a nice thing.
Yeah.
The two.
Exactly.
So, I would say, like, if you look at my influence, right? Obviously my father and growing, and honestly, my mother as well. Like my dad obviously is the architect and you see what he creates. But my mom is she is like an organized, like finely tuned machine. She's a mother of 5 kids. And granted, we were spread out, but she had to make sure everything went just right. When we were young, we used to take caravan trips across, to like visit different parts of the country with my cousins and at some point we might have like 10 or 12 different vehicles caravanning across the country, going to different campgrounds and stuff like that. And so, we had a Volkswagen van and there were 7 of us and everything had to fit into that van, right? Everything, right? Including camping gear, including food, including all of our clothing and whatever else we wanted to have for our stuff. And I mean, she had that thing just packed to a T. Every single thing had a spot. We each had an allotted bin. Like we all had the same size bin. That's as much as we could bring. And it was just, that system and her, like speaking about like rules or organization, like she knows how to get that done. And so inside me, I feel like there's part of me that can very much be that way. By watching her and being around her and being the first girl and then being the older girl with the younger kids, like I ended up doing a lot of stuff with her and for her. And so I think those systems are in me just as much as the creative and from my dad. But then beyond that, like, going back to the Finnish roots. I mean, we were raised with the sauna and, and certain Finnish words floating around the house, that other people would call like your slippers something. They would call them slippers and we would call them tossut. And so, I was very proud of my Finnish heritage. But when I was 18, just after high school, I went as an exchange student, and I lived in Finland, in Oulu, with a family.
Wow.
And went to a high school there, and ended up getting to take a lot of art classes. But Finland, like, design is embedded in the culture there.
Yeah.
It's embedded in a way that it's hard to really explain, because it's like, like the Iittala glassware, for example, right? Like, we go to FinStyle or to Always Mod, or, and we pay a lot for these pieces because we value the design, and they are high-end choices in our country.
Yeah.
And in Finland, like, that stuff is
That's
sold
just normal.
it's in the grocery stores.
Right.
I mean, it's like, when I was there, and granted, it's been 20 years, maybe they have a little bit more diversity, I don't know. But I had the same silverware at home. I had the same silverware at school. I had it at every restaurant that I went. I mean, it's like, I now have, I have that silverware because it, like, makes me feel connected to being there. But this idea of design, and not just function, because there's also the form and the function.
Yeah.
There is beauty in it, but
Right.
it is stripped down to the very, very basic function of what it needs to be. Right?
Yeah.
And so that is so ingrained in the culture. It's like everyone expects it. Why would you not have that? It is like standard issue.
Right.
And so that idea of everyday design is really what inspires me more than anything. Like everyday jewelry. So, like, when it comes to jewelry, if you look at fashion designers, they're producing a new collection like every season. Every single season they have a new. I mean, I'm not doing that. And some days I'm like, I need to design more pieces, and then other days I'm like, you know what? I am designing pieces that are more classic and timeless, and they're not maybe as fashion or trendy, but I'm still selling the same things 8 years later. You know what I mean? So, like, there's a timelessness to it, and that is definitely so. When you had asked if there's a Nordicness about it, it's like that year that I spent in Finland, and then just the heritage and the pride of being connected to that culture is definitely also just kind of oozing out of me. Like, there. Do you remember the magazine? Nordic Reach.
Nordic Reach. Yeah, we got that for the years. I think when you were a Swedish Institute member, you got a subscription.
Well, so one year, like, someone put out a call for people, and I responded, and they're like, "Well, do it today." So I had like a little one-page little feature.
Awesome.
And, like, the title of it was "Finnish by Osmosis," and so it's kind of like all of these things are kind of like they just have sunken into me.
Yeah.
And then they permeate. And I'm not always conscious of it, but it's just kind of, like my husband always says, I know what I know. It's like, I know what I know, and I do the best I can with what I know and what I have.
Yeah.
And
wow, that's a great, I know what I know. That's such a huge thing.
It's true.
One of the things I've been thinking about in the last few years it's a similar related phrase, and it is, I can only be who I am.
It's true.
And it sounds kind of dumb, but it's or obvious or something, but it's actually like totally huge. Yeah. It's profoundly
my husband.
huge.
He's full of stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's full of things like that. But it really is. It really is the truth, right?
Yeah, I know what I know.
I know what I know.
Yeah. What's your relationship like with Finland as a place? Like, do you find yourself actually thinking about it when you're making your work or just walking around, or is it part of the fabric that's not so conscious?
Oh.
And do you have Finns who love your jewelry and who've bought it when they've been here and they bring it back, and you have sort of a Finnish fan club?
Well, my sister-in-law is she's from Finland. She's lived in the United States for maybe 15 years, I think.
Okay.
But she goes back she and my brother go back
Yeah.
with their kids almost every year,
Yeah.
maybe every other year.
Yeah.
She's a great supporter.
Ambassador for you there. Good,
And I've
good.
had relatives who have gone and like brought gifts for people there to other relatives. But Finland, I mean, it's when you're an exchange student, and for me, I got lucky because I got to go to a place that I already had a connection with,
Sure.
or I thought I had a connection with. And while there are a lot of similarities between Minnesota and Finland, I think that because there were of those similarities, you really got down to the nuanced differences between us.
Yeah.
There are pretty distinct differences between the Finnish culture and the American culture.
Right.
But so, it's interesting when you're an exchange student and you go somewhere for that long of a time, for a year, there's this arc, right, that you live, and it's like exciting, and then it gets really hard, and then you're like really homesick, and then people, you make, the connections that you make with people start getting stronger, and then by the time it's time to go, you really don't want to go.
Right.
It's like it's literally like I used to say I grew a life there. It's like you grow a life, and then it is cut off.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
it's just this it's frozen in time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the relationships don't exist. Like one of my dearest friends is someone that I met there. She lives there. She and her husband, like she came to visit one summer, the summer that we started Silver Cocoon actually. And then she and her husband and their son, he was 5.5 at the time, they came in 2008 and they lived with us for 10 months. And they actually had a baby girl that was born in the United States.
Wow.
But so like those connections obviously are still there, and there are things like Skype and whatnot that can keep you connected nowadays. But it's never the same as living there.
Yeah.
It's never the same as that time as being,
Yep.
it was literally 20 years ago. Like
Yeah.
20 years ago, I was there.
Right.
Lamenting how dark, it is.
Yeah.
She just posted pictures. The sunrise is like at 10:30 or 10:45.
Yeah.
And the sunset is at 2:15.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of sun. And so there are these essences, I guess, of my time there. And I've been back twice. And so more, it's just kind of like, I guess if I had to articulate it, it's just, it's literally like an essence.
Yeah.
It's a feeling inside my heart that it's like having like a comfort food. There are things that rekindle that warmth.
Right.
That's just a part of me.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily that I'm thinking, oh, remember that time that I walked through the forest and that forest really inspires me in this way. It's not that articulated.
Yeah. Oh, this is such good stuff.
This is such good stuff.
Okay, here's
so funny.
here's another question that I want to ask you. And this is kind of it's sort of a weird thing to say. And so I'm going to try to phrase it nicely. But one of the things that I like about you is that you're good on social media. And so you're always like, I'm doing this show and here's my display, and that's how I have to live because I've got to hustle, I've got this concert. I want people to come, or I'm going on tour, and I want the whole world to know where I'm going to be because I want people to come. And, so I like that. I feel energized by you because you're out there, you want to sell jewelry, and you want to get it out there. But you're good on social media. And I remember, I don't know, this is probably a long time ago now, but you posted a photo that really struck me because it seemed like I really related to it. And I don't want to put any spin on it, but I just want to see if you remember this or if you respond. It was a picture of yourself, and you had split screened it where there was two of you, and one picture was you, I don't know if it's 10 years earlier, and then it was you and the contemporary you. And the earlier photo of you looked really different, and you had different hair, different glasses, and you looked older.
It was a driver's license, wasn't it?
I can't remember, but you looked older in the really old picture.
Yeah.
And then the current picture where you're kind of like a mom and you're 30 something or whatever, but you looked like a rock star in the new picture.
Yeah. That was my driver's license.
And I just thought, wow, well, one, that's like really you're sort of laying it on the line there for the people who know you. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was very cool of you to do that. And then also I thought, like, that's how I feel about myself. I feel like, gosh, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, who was that guy? Mm-hmm. You know? And I feel like so much more at home in my flesh now than then. And like, what is going on with, what is that about?
Oh, gee.
I mean,
now you're getting into the real can of worms. You are opening the can.
Well, you were motivated enough to post it.
I was, because I was in a good spot then. I'm not in as good a spot anymore. But I mean, you know, and you know, the lead in from social media, it's like, social media. It's tough, right? Because I don't know, how many hearts did you get? How many likes did you get? You know, I mean, there's always someone who has more. Right? There's always someone who has more. Mm-hmm. And yes, I feel compelled that I need to share and I need to do stuff because of my business, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I've actually had a conversation about this with the woman who is working with me, and just kind of strategies about it. Because there are different strategies that you can have with social media.
Right.
You can take a strategy where you are all business.
Yep.
You just push your business, you push your business, you push your business.
Right.
And like, that's it.
Yeah.
But that's not my Instagram feed for sure.
Uh-huh.
You know? Because I don't think we need more of that. There's in 2009, I did a project with a friend of mine who's a photographer, and I approached her to see if she would help me basically develop some images for my work. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have, context, people wearing my jewelry. Mm-hmm. And we basically used people that we knew. There were a couple people there was a woman and her granddaughter who she approached at Target because they were really distinct, striking people.
Yeah.
But we basically just like photograph people in their own clothes,
yeah.
in their own, just normal situations. Like literally, like if I could have had them mopping the floor, I would have had them mopping the floor, because there's this idea of like everyday design, right? Mm-hmm. That's one thing. But like the everyday, like real person is another thing as well. It's like, this is what it's for. It's for real people. It's not glammed up. It's not,
mm-hmm.
Only a certain
special
type
occasion
of
jewelry.
looking woman, you know what I mean? It's not only the young, because I mean, I have a range of women who wear my jewelry, and that's the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. That's my whole point. Mm-hmm. And so then if on social media, I'm going to only present a business front, like I am, when you think about brands in the last several years, there's the kind of you see this trend of people becoming their own brand. Like the person is the
person is the brand. Yes,
the person is the brand. Their story is what you're buying into, and like that's really flattering. It also puts a lot of pressure on you. Mm-hmm. And
do you like that kind of interaction with the artist?
Sure. I mean, I've. A couple years ago, probably right after I posted my driver's license picture, well, maybe not right then, maybe a year after that, I was just doing a lot. I was saying yes to everything for my work. Huh. I had been, doing, I did the Whole30. Have you heard of that? It's like basically you eliminate processed food and any food that causes irritants. So you're basically eating like a lot of vegetables, protein, healthy fats, and fruits. It's like you're eating real food. There's nothing really, I mean, it's like how everyone should eat, right? You eat real food. But it worked really great for me. I looked great. Mm-hmm. I looked great in my driver's license picture compared to the last time I had to have it taken. But then I was also doing, Bikram yoga, and I was running, and I was just really trying to do everything.
Right.
And I paid the price. I basically hit a wall.
Yeah.
I hit a wall where my body just got really exhausted.
Yeah.
And was like, you can't do that anymore, or I'm going to make you cry, or or I'm going to make you fall asleep, or I'm going to make you not be able to deal with stress,
Right.
So it's like, I don't know if it was, I mean, I say that I ran myself into the ground, but I'm also at the age where hormonally things change as you get older, and so a lot of like the last couple of years, there's been a lot of dealing with that, like really coming to terms with, well, sure, everyone wants to be everything, everyone wants to do it all, but what can I realistically do? Yes,
and be a parent.
That's
like huge.
It's huge. So, there's a lot of stuff now, especially lately, because November and December is always a really, really hectic time of the year for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a sale or some sort of show every single weekend of November and December, and by the time Christmas came around, I'm like, closing shop. I was closed for 2 weeks, didn't even touch anything. I didn't look at anything work related, and it was great. I spent it with my family, but even come January, I was like, wow, I am not ready. I feel like, without your, like my old yoga teacher told me, it's like, without your health, you don't have anything. And so that's a really important thing to get a hold of too.
Yeah.
So it's a tough balance.
It is.
It's a really tough balance.
Yeah.
But, so I'm learning how to say no to more things, which I think you hear a lot about that these days too. Which is good. I'm at a point now where I can start to say no. I've been saying yes for so long that I can be a little bit more selective, which is going to be good for me. The other really amazing thing I'm going to tell you about is that a friend of mine is traveling right now. She and her husband are traveling from mid-January until the first week in March. And I had made some sort of offhanded comment to her about just how, I feel like I've had a really hard time finding creative time.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a creative person, but a lot of my time is spent just running, filling orders, making stuff, seeking new things. And, it's a lot of business minded stuff. And so, she's like, oh, I have a great idea. You should just use our condo while we're gone as your creative retreat. And so,
nice.
So I've gone twice.
Is that here in the city?
It's just here in the city. So I've kind of blocked off some weekends. I didn't go last weekend because we were with family, but I've had 2 weekends there.
Oh, cool.
So far. And I'm doing something completely different.
Yeah.
It's not even jewelry. I mean, it's like something completely different. And I'm tapping into an interest that I actually developed when I was in Finland, like more fiber art based stuff.
Wow.
So I'm just kind of carving out this little window of time to shut everything else out. And it feels great. It's also scary because then my entrepreneur mind comes in and is like, well, how are you going to do this? And I'm like, no, we're just making right now. So I think there's wisdom that comes with age, and there's wisdom that comes from falling down and getting back up.
Yeah. Wow, this is so practical. I love it. So do you have any other closing words of encouragement or whatever to any of, because you got a couple hundred people listening to this conversation who are artists of all types. So
or
if you
people who support artists,
right? And so if you could tell them anything, like what, I don't know, do you have any words of wisdom?
I mean, you were talking about finding your voice, and I think that a voice, if you think about it, is about making noise to be heard, right? So beyond that, or maybe before that voice, is just really kind of knowing who you are. Like, goes back to I know what I know, and I can only be myself, right? And so no one is going to do a thing exactly the way you're going to do it. If you are just true to yourself, I guess that's really the best thing. And everything that I think everything that I have done, at least up to starting this jewelry line, I just did because I wanted to do it. I might have tried to push it beyond just my own thing, but I was going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's your own interest.
Right. It was my own interest. And so, when my husband and I started Silver Cocoon way back in 2001, I remember we had these conversations about what it would be. And it's basically an umbrella. It's an umbrella for any creative endeavor that we want to do. It's like, my husband said, he's like, I want to get paid to brush my teeth. I'd be doing it anyway. So it's like that might not translate super well, but basically the idea is that we're going to be doing this stuff anyway. Like, this is the stuff that we're compelled and inspired to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are lucky that we have been able to turn it into something that can also support us. Like there was a point where, I had a good job at that point in my life. I had a good job with good benefits, and there came a point in time where it was like we made a choice that we're going to do what we wanted. We're going to try to do what we want to do now.
Yeah.
We're going to try, it's like a lot of people work their job and save up their money so that they can retire and then do what they want to do. And that's probably really smart. That's a really good way to do it. But way back then I had this idea that, well, why wouldn't we just, if we're going to do that stuff anyway and we're going to want to do it forever, why wouldn't we just do it now?
And have that be what you do.
And just have that be what we do.
Yeah.
And, somehow it seemed that we would, still end up in the same spot. I don't know that we're going to end up in the same spot financially as if we had been, saving money this whole time. But at least, my sister says that today is the best day of my life. Today is all we really have. And so we just really try to do the best we can every day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have, let's see, one kind of nerdy question and then an artsy question, and then we'll wrap it up, and Dawn's going to ask you something. So my nerdy question is, you're the order fulfillment person at Silver Cocoon, or for the jewelry.
Are you going to ask about puffy envelopes?
Well, yeah, I love office supplies. I love envelopes and tape and Sharpies, and I love the post office.
Labels.
Yeah.
I love labels. I love it all. That's what Dawn gets me for Christmas.
Yeah.
But anyway, so because I'm doing that all the time for CDs and stuff, like
Yeah.
fulfilling orders, going to the post office, and is that your job?
Yeah, pretty much. I have, I have a woman who has been with me since it's been almost a year.
Wow, so you have an employee?
Well, we're like in the dating. We're kind of in like the dating phase of potential. Like she
your intern? Or
no,
is she an associate?
She is my associate.
Yeah.
Or associate.
There is like, I'm not really making enough money to be able to pay her what she's worth.
Right.
But what I can do is, I've really just opened myself up to her. And so she's been seeing how I do things,
sure,
and helping me along the way. And I don't know I don't know what the line looks like between here and there.
Yeah.
But the goal is that we're going there.
Sure.
Yeah,
what I mean? Totally.
And so between she and I, I'm filling the orders.
Okay. Well, here's the nerdy thing that I was interested in. Like, are you aware of like your inventory? Like, do you think to yourself, oh, I've only got 3 green pods in the house, and so I better make more? Or, oh, I've got 50.
You would totally
I got 50 blue blade bracelets, and those are going to last me forever. Do you actually think about that?
So my studio is in the basement. We have these like 9.5 foot ceilings in our basement. It's not what it sounds like working in your basement.
Right.
It's a really nice space. So on one wall of my basement, have you ever seen those plastic little organizers with the little drawers in them?
Yeah.
So there's like, what is it, like 5 across and 4 down or something? So like 20 per thing. So I've got like 16 to 20 of those things all mounted in a grid. And so it's like every row is a color, and then there's different styles in there. So like you can kind of, it's not totally as simple as being like, I spy, that one's empty, but it's almost as good as
So
that.
you have a sense when I better make some more pods in the color
Yeah.
blue or whatever. Wow, see I love that.
It's like the VW van translated to your
See?
basement
That's my
wall.
mom. That's my
Yeah,
mom right
yeah.
there. That is my mom.
Yeah.
She would be so
Oh
proud.
man, I love shelving too. I love like storage
Oh,
solutions.
you should come and see
it's
that.
so
I'll
nice.
send you a picture of that
Yeah,
wall.
send me a
It's
picture.
pretty
That
cool.
Sounds-
I would
sounds
get
beautiful.
so excited. Okay, and then here's my here's a less nerdy question, but do you have a favorite color?
When I was young, when I was like a little girl, I would always say red. But I would have to say that it's blue. I've come back to blue.
Yeah, blue is my favorite color.
I think everybody has blue as a favorite color at some point in their life.
Though you've been consistently green fan for
I have,
a long.
but I'm sure when I was younger, I probably had a blue phase.
Don, your blue period.
Don't we all have a blue period?
I mean, that's my I guess if I had to pick one color, but right now, so just this last November, December, I introduced gold.
Oh,
Ooh.
So like,
How can
same
it-
styles, but with gold filled chain and findings and stuff. So
okay.
So instead of the oxidized silver, which is the dark metal, you then have this like shiny gold with, and so the gold looks really good with the neutrals. So white and ivory and black and gray.
The wood.
A little bit of wood.
Wood,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
But for Valentine's Day, I added this really soft pink with the gold, and it just about, it's like looking at a piece of watermelon, like your mouth just like starts, they're so good. So in some ways right now, my like fashion color is pink. Like I'm in love
Awesome.
with pink.
Now, can the people listening to this conversation, can they see these on Silver Cocoon?
Oh, yeah.
Is it silvercocoon.com?
Silvercocoon.com.
That's where you want everybody to go.
Sure.
And then how about social media? Like, do you want people to follow you on Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want
Go for
Twitter?
it.
What's your favorite
Well,
platform?
so Instagram, my handle is Tia_Silver Cocoon. My husband is under S_Silver Cocoon. So he, we both kind of have our own separate things. This is he takes really great shots. We do have a Silver Cocoon Facebook page.
So we can like you there. People can like it.
People can like the Silver Cocoon Facebook page. I'm, whenever I post something on that page, it also goes to Twitter. But I'm not ever really on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like actually on Twitter.
But that's handy, though, that you can just set your Facebook or your
Yeah.
Instagram to just go to Twitter.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're followable in all those places.
Followable.
And then will you hit the road and set up a display or do a lecture or do a workshop?
Can
if
someone
people want-
commission you to
Yeah.
make a design?
Like, can people call you and invite you over, like to their town to do something?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
Every year I go up to Duluth. My parents host me in their house. I do a sale in December, and I've now actually started going up twice a year. So I'll go in June and then I'll go in December. Last year I went down to Iowa. A friend hosted me in Dubuque, Iowa. And that was mostly for a sale, but my aunt hosted me in Bayfield.
Nice.
2 summers ago, and she had her. She has like an artist group, and so they all came before the sale started, and I don't know what I said, but I talked for an hour.
And you did a lecture series at the Walker too. I
did.
wanted to go to that so
yeah,
bad.
That was
and
pretty good.
I couldn't go.
It was part of the art school.
Oh, cool.
So of course I'm always open to doing that.
You go
but-
hit the road if you want, and then if there are shops and stuff, they could carry your.
Oh, of course.
your pieces.
Yep. I wholesale to.
Do you ever do kids art as like an artist in residence for kids? Because I think, like, if you say kids, you can make something with lasers. They'd just be all over it, right?
One year for our older son's birthday, we pulled out a whole bunch of scraps. And we set up a big table out in the backyard, and the kids got to make sculptures. We had like glue guns, and
Nice.
they all
Nice.
left with the sculpture. So, yeah, I'm open to doing a lot of stuff. If someone asks, I usually
You might say no.
I might
You might say no,
but
depending.
yeah. If it's interesting and different, I usually go for it.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, we also wanted to ask a question we asked the guests who appear here, which is, what would you tell your kindergarten self?
Oh my goodness. First, I have to visualize myself in kindergarten. I have one memory from kindergarten.
Wow.
That's not very good. I think I would just say to trust myself. Trust my instinct and just be okay with myself.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
Tia, thank you for coming over.
Thank you, Tia.
This has been totally fun. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Find us all online and tune in for more stuff coming up. Thank you. Good night.
Creativity Drill.